Hello, I hope your day is going great. My name is Tim Fayola. I'm a senior sales engineer here at Network to Code. Today's topic is data orchestration with Nautobot's single source of truth application, what it does and why you need it in an automated environment. Folks, this is going to be a really cool session. We'll start with a quick overview of Network to Code's reference framework architecture. We'll then discuss what data orchestration actually is and why you need it. We'll then cover Nautobot's single source of truth application. Then we'll wrap it up with a demo of Nautobot updating ServiceNow with new devices using the single source of truth application. Let's start off by looking at Network to Code's automation framework reference architecture. You can see that the source of truth sits at the center of the automation framework architecture. The purpose of the source of truth is to provide one place to go to answer the question, what should the state of the network be? As part of this, the source of truth is to act as the single source of data for network automation. Because when you think about it, the automation's job is to impart the intended state onto the actual network. Having a single place for the automation to get this data makes the automation more efficient and more scalable. We are often asked how a source of truth fits into an environment where you already have external systems that hold different types of data. And the answer is that a firm can keep using their existing sources of record when a network source of truth is present. For example, for any given data type, say IP address information, there needs to be one single authoritative system or system of record for that data type. In this example, an IPAM system is typically the source of record for an IP address information. So you may be asking, how can we keep using these external systems when the source of truth needs to hold all the data to describe the network's intended state? The answer to that lies in Nautobot and the single source of truth application. One of the requirements of a network source of truth is data orchestration. A user should be able to make a change to data in the authoritative source for that data type, and then that change should be able to propagate automatically throughout the rest of the systems that might need that data automatically. Gone are the days where a user should have to make the same data change in more than one place. That becomes problematic over time, and it does not scale. To do data orchestration, the source of truth aggregates data from different sources of record in the environment and then distributes that data to the other systems that need it. The single source of truth app does this data orchestration for Nautobot. Nautobot's single source of truth application allows Nautobot to act as an aggregation layer across all the different authoritative sources of data in your environment. Each data type will have a single authoritative source of record for that data type. The single source of truth then reaches out to each of those systems, aggregates all their authoritative data, and puts it into one place. So users of those external systems can keep using those systems, and their changes will be picked up by Nautobot programmatically and automatically. Enough talk, let's get on with the demo. Here, we're going to show how Nautobot can update ServiceNow using the single source of truth application. Let's get to it. First, we'll take a look at our ServiceNow instance, and it shows exactly one switch present. Let's take a look now in our Nautobot instance. Here we're looking at the Rio 01 site, and it shows 9 devices in this site. If we take a quick look at these devices, we can see a list of them here. And I'm going to hop into this first Rio device here, this ASW01 device, and take a quick look around. I'm going to scroll down here and see that the custom field for last sync to ServiceNow is not populated here, nor does this device have any tags. That'll be important to come back to later as we progress through this. In order to start the synchronization, I'm going to synchronize it manually, although everything you're seeing here can also be done programmatically periodically. Under the application top-level menu, there is an application called the Single Source of Truth application, and that's where we're going to head to right now. The Single Source of Truth application does a lot of cool stuff. The first thing it does is provide a framework for new integrations into new systems. So for example, I'm demoing a push into ServiceNow in this example. However, any other system that has reasonably modern APIs or allows programmatic accessibility, we can design a integration into the SSoT application that will allow the SSoT to pull data from that device, update the device with data, or both, depending on the data type. What you're seeing here are simply examples, definitely not limitations. I'm going to go into the Nautobot to ServiceNow integration. Note the direction of the arrow in the top left. It's going from Nautobot to ServiceNow. This means that Nautobot has authoritative information that ServiceNow users will need to do their jobs. The specific data that's going to be pushed from Nautobot into ServiceNow is described over here in the top right in this data mappings panel. Here it shows the data types that are going to be pushed into ServiceNow and the corresponding ServiceNow fields that those instances will correspond to. As an example, an instance of a device in Nautobot will be populated into ServiceNow as an IP switch, and we'll see that explicitly later on in this demo, and so on and so forth down the line here. So let's go ahead and get to it. I'm going to initiate this synchronization manually through this button. The first thing to take note of on this screen that you might be seeing is that there is a dry run box and it is currently check marked. Keeping this box check marked will not allow Nautobot to actually make changes in the target system. So in this example, we're going to uncheck the dry run. This will allow Nautobot to compare the inventories of both systems and then update ServiceNow with the information that ServiceNow is lacking. There are some times, though, where you might want to keep the dry run box checkmarked. For example, you might just want to periodically compare the two inventories, but not necessarily make all the changes. There may be some business logic around understanding that delta without necessarily fixing the delta every time you see it. For this site here, we're going to use the Rio 01 site that we just looked at. And let's go ahead and run this job right now. During this process of synchronization, Nautobot is doing a couple things. First, it's comparing whether ServiceNow has the Rio 1 site. If it doesn't, it'll create it in ServiceNow. Then it'll go device by device and check to see if ServiceNow has the instance of all the devices in Rio. If not, it will add the devices and their interfaces. Now this does take a second, so I'm going to pause here and I'll come back when this is done. Great, this is almost ready to complete, but while it's doing that, I'll talk to you about how long this often takes and how often you'd want to run this type of synchronization. How long each synchronization takes depends on a couple things. The topology between the Nautobot and the target system, or the source of the data and Nautobot. It depends on the topology between those two. It also depends on how big the data set is. How much data, in this example, does Nautobot need to push into ServiceNow? And finally, it'll depend on the resources that each ServiceNow and Nautobot have to process and assimilate a large amount of data potentially. So depending on those factors and how your Nautobot system and target system are resourced, that will govern how often you'll want to push data from Nautobot, in this case, to ServiceNow. Another factor to consider in that is also your business requirements. Do you need hourly updates between the two systems, or is a few times a day okay? All those factors will determine how you resource your systems and then how often you want the data synchronization to occur. This has completed, so let's first just take a quick look in ServiceNow and see what changed. First of all, let me refresh my screen here, and we do see the new devices from Rio 01 that are now in ServiceNow. I'm going to hop into this first device here, and we also see the interfaces from this ASW01 switch in Rio 1 have also been populated into ServiceNow. Now let's go back to Nautobot and take a look as to what happened in Nautobot. I'm going to go back to the Rio1 site. And let's take a look at this Rio1 ASW01 switch that we just saw that was synchronized into ServiceNow. A few things to take note of here. One, this custom field that was previously blank for last synced to ServiceNow, that now has a specific date in it, 2025, May 8th. And it also has a tag here. Remember, there was no tag before, but now we have a new tag here that says SSoT synced to ServiceNow. This is just what we happen to do in our demo environment. Network to Code can work with your firm to customize how they want data that's been synchronized into an external system to be marked or otherwise logged. Let's also take a look at the interfaces. This device has a few interfaces, and let's take a look at the Gigabit Ethernet 1 interface. This interface also was synchronized to ServiceNow. It has this updated, and it also has the tag SSoT synced to ServiceNow. So Nautobot SSoT did a few things here. One, it reached out to ServiceNow and compared the inventory for the Rio1 site for the devices, both in Nautobot and ServiceNow. If ServiceNow was missing any devices, and it was, Nautobot then pushed over those devices and some other information. Let's go back to the single source of truth dashboard here and take a look at the other information that was pushed over. So we saw device was pushed over, and we also saw interface in this example was also pushed over to ServiceNow. Let's also take a look at location. We'll go back to ServiceNow. And for this switch we were just looking at prior, there's a location populated, Rio01, and we'll look for that using our lookup function in ServiceNow. And here it is, Rio01. Imagine this now at scale, with a single source of truth application, not just tied into one system, but perhaps 10 or maybe 15, orchestrating and consolidating the data amongst your system. This is a foundational requirement for comprehensive workflow automation. Nautobot's single source of truth application solves this problem for you. Thank you, and have a great day.